Hey guys, how are we doing? Very well. In today's video I'm going to talk about tattooed brides and just brides in general and all that wedding-y fun stuff. I've touched upon tattooed brides before. I'm not sure what video it was in. I'll have to research that, but I've definitely talked about tattooed brides before. Maybe in a couple of videos, but I know I've mentioned tattooed brides somewhere on my channel somewhere, but I want to make a dedicated video to tattooed brides and how tattooed brides are represented and all the things tattooed brides go through. Now, I have never been married, I have never been a bride, I've never experienced the bride life, so I'm not talking from personal experience or anything like that. I'm just talking about representation of tattooed brides and stuff like that. So I can't talk from experience, but you'll understand where I'm getting at as the video goes on, hopefully. So the reason why I'm doing this video is because a lovely subscriber of mine, Carolyn, who lives in Canada, come across a magazine when she was out shopping, and it was a bridal magazine, but the bride on the cover of the magazine had tattoos, and she sent me a picture of it and she was just like, do you think these are real? Do you think they're fake? And I started to get more and more curious about the whole situation. So I'm going to be 110% honest with you guys because that's just the way I am. But when I first saw this picture, I instantly, like straight away, thought the tattoos on this bride were fake. And just how she looks like a runway model, right? And I was just looking at it like, yeah, these are fake. There's no way that this model has real tattoos. There's just no way. She just doesn't look like the type of person. Like, this sounds very, very judgmental, I know, but when you think of runway models and models on the front of magazines, for the most part, like 99% of the time, unless it's like an alternative magazine or maybe a music magazine, the models, if it's like a magazine to do with like models, clothes, fashion, makeup, whatever, 9 times out of 10, there's no tattoos to be seen anywhere. So like my brain has been like conditioned to think any tattoo on a magazine or in a old media publication, it's fake. I'm just instantly like, yeah, this is fake. It's not real. Wow. Like, there's so many alternative tattoo models out there. You're gonna use one with fake tattoos. Like, total enragement. That was my first thought, obviously. I rationalised myself eventually, don't worry. There's been a few cases here and there. I think I made a video about it, to be honest with you. Maybe. There's been a few cases here and there where designer brands will use, you know, your everyday model like Kendall Jenner, Gigi Hadid, Bella Hadid, all of those pretty ladies, right? And they will use them and they will put fake tattoos on them. So I had that in the back of my mind also. Like, anytime I see a runway model or any kind of model, I just instantly think like, nah, no tattoos. Because most designer brands will only hire models with clean, pure skin. I'm just using words I've heard. So that's another reason why my instant thought was, they're fake, they can't be real, right? But yeah, a lot of makeup companies, designer brands, fashion brands, jewelry brands, like you name it, a company or brand has probably done it, but they will get your everyday plain model with no tattoos or very minimal, not noticeable tattoos at all, and they will use either makeup or temporary tattoos to create a tattooed look on a model. Elmo is proper moving today. Are you okay, sir? And I can understand, like, even though it sucks that companies and brands and photographers and whoever does this, I can understand why they do it. Like, my rational side of my brain, the one that doesn't get outraged so quickly, I can understand why they do it, is because if you were to say hire me as a model, which no, that wouldn't happen, but say if you were to hire me as a model, right, and my tattoos may not be the look that this company or brand or whoever are going for, you know, because you get so many different styles of tattooing. You get heavily tattooed, lightly tattooed, and then the styles within tattooing. So you've got traditional, which is quite bold and heavy. My lights are proper washing out my tattoos today. Okay, fantastic. But this is what I would call somewhat bold and heavy, you know, it's not like super feminine or anything like that. But then you get like watercolor tattoos, which are quite light and pretty and, you know, elegant, so to say. So I can understand why companies and brands don't hire tattooed people, because they may not have the tattoo look that they're after, and it's a lot harder to find a tattoo model that has the look that they want than it is to just get any old runway model or whoever and just slap a bunch of makeup on her or temporary tattoos. It's a lot easier to do that, so I can understand why they do it, but it's still like, hi, just get a tattoo model, maybe, possibly, you know. So even though that like it makes sense as to why they do that, you know, getting models with no tattoos and then just putting makeup on them or temporary tattoos, it's still frustrating, to be honest with you, because there isn't much representation of tattooed people within, you know, what I call old media. So this is like magazines, newspapers, maybe TV shows, as opposed to sort of like social media. So like YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, you see tattooed people all the time. Like, we represent ourselves out here. Now, I know it's not that deep and it's not that serious, I guess, especially when it comes to, you know, other representation that doesn't get any light shone on them, especially when it comes to like people of colour, disabilities, LGBTQ+. Like, a lot of publications or a lot of old media need to come a long way. I'm very much aware of that, but my content is tattoos and that's what I'm talking about. Just the tattoo side of things. Like, obviously I could very much deep dive into the other issues when it comes to old media representing other people that aren't white and straight. Let's be serious. But I'm just talking about the tattoo side of things. I hope you can understand that. But yeah, the representation of tattooed people really, it's come a long way in many ways, but in other ways it has not, and tattooed brides is definitely one of the ways that it hasn't come a long way in. And I feel like if there was more tattooed brides represented in your everyday old media publications like bridal magazines, I feel like it would really speeden up the acceptance of tattoos on brides and just tattoos in general, to be honest with you. I'm sure most of you have had the question of what about when you get married, when people are talking about your tattoos, as if to say, oh, you're gonna look really ugly with all those tattoos on you when you get married. When you're in a bridal dress, it's gonna ruin your bridal dress. Like, I've had that directed to me plenty of times, even though I don't even want to get married. Like, well, I'm not like opposed to it, maybe when I'm much older, but for the time being, in the next sort of 5-10 years, it's really not something I want to do. But even if I was to want to get married, or even if I want to be a bride or whatever, even if I want to wear a pretty dress, okay, I'm not a dressy person, but if I want to wear a pretty dress, my tattoo shouldn't affect my style or how I am seen, if you know what I'm saying. Your everyday person, so someone that, you know, doesn't get tattooed, or they have 1 or 2 tattoos, or they're just don't like tattoos, they may not have seen a heavily tattooed bride because, again, the representation isn't there. You guys most definitely or probably have seen tattooed brides. You may have even been one yourself, or you may follow tattoo artists on Instagram and they've got married and then you've seen their bridal photos on their Instagram and stuff like that. But for the everyday person, seeing a moderately to heavily tattooed bride, it's not something, you just don't see it. You don't see it. And I feel like bridal magazines really need to step up on this and squash down the stereotypes of you have to be a clean bride, you can't have any tattooed skin, you can't have, you know, crazy coloured hair or anything like that. Like, you need to be angelic. And I feel like if bridal magazines kind of, you know, step it up a bit, come into this century and represent tattooed brides. I mean, one, the question of what will you look like when you get married, or, you know, are you gonna cover your tattoos up when you get married, or are you gonna wear, what do you call those things, like a bolero? Is it a bolero? I don't think it's a bolero. Like a cardigan thing. Like, I've had that question. I've had people say, like, oh, what would be your dress if you get married? Would you cover your tattoos? Would you hide your tattoos? And it's just like, no, they're a part of me. Why would I hide them? So like I was saying before, I've never been married. I've never organised a wedding or anything like that. My ex-best friend was once upon a time going to get married, but she never did in the end. And she had a couple of bridal magazines, and I remember flicking through them and there was not one tattooed bride in there at all. And even if you put into Google bride, I guarantee you will not see one with a tattoo on show. And if you do, it will be minuscule. You will not see a heavily tattooed bride there. For the most part, it will be brides just clean skin, nothing on them at all. So I have a history of seeing bridal photos and seeing every single one of them with no tattoos, no alternativeness. It's basically like when you see a bridal magazine or a bridal photo of a dress or whatever, like if you're looking for dresses online, it's like the models have zero personality. Like, they're just there to show the dress or to show the wedding day or the event or whatever. Like, the brides have zero personality when it comes to advertising. I'm not talking about people's personal weddings or anything like that. I've seen many beautiful photos that have a lot of character behind them. But I'm talking about like the advertising side of things here. But they just all look so plain and uninterested, you know? And maybe it's because I'm not into getting married, but it just doesn't sell it for me, you know? It's just not personal at all. And I feel like if there was a more representation of alternative models or tattooed models or whatever you want to class it as, I just feel like it would be more realistic, because there's 1 in 4 people now that have a tattoo. I think it may even be 1 in 3 people now. I think it depends where you live. I think if you live in a city, it's like 1 in 3 people. But if you live in like a quiet town or whatever, it could be 1 in 4, 1 in 6. I'm not entirely sure. Now I know of one magazine, which is quite an indie magazine that's here in the UK, and it's called Rock and Roll Bride. Helen Anderson was a part of it when she got married, and I think she's quite close friends with the person who runs it, maybe, possibly. So we do have that, but compared to the, I don't know, hundreds upon hundreds of bridal magazines that exist in the world, like, that's nothing. That is like literally nothing. So it's very much a niche thing. Like, you have to search for it to find it. I feel like magazines like this need to become more apparent, especially like I was saying nowadays, where there's 1 in 3 people or 1 in 6 people that have tattoos. And I feel like if we were to see more tattooed brides on the covers of magazines, I think it would take down the stigma of, you know, ew, tattooed bride, how tacky. Like, I have seen and heard of many people that will cover their tattoos in makeup when they get married because of, you know, what their family would say, or the fact that your stereotypical bride is very clean and pure, and tattoos are seen as, you know, tacky. So yeah, that's my feelings towards bridal magazines. Honestly, I feel like there's a lack of representation when it comes to tattoo models or tattooed brides, and especially, you know, even on the images online and stuff like that, you barely ever see it unless you actually Google it. Like, if you Google tattooed bride, you're obviously going to get results. So let's go back to the magazine I was talking about at the beginning of the video, the one that Carolyn sent me a picture of. So after we talked about it, I was very much curious to see what the crack is with this, whether the model's tattoos were real or not. So I Googled to see if I could get the magazine over here, but it is a Canadian bridal magazine, so there's literally, like, it wasn't happening. I would not be able to get it over here. Well, maybe if I really tried hard enough, I would have been able to get it over here. So after I Googled the magazine, I went on the website to see if I could buy it or ship it over here or anything, you know, just so I can show you guys in, you know, person, but I couldn't. So I went onto their Instagram page and I kind of had a little scroll through, and I scrolled through quite far down, and there was a post of the magazine cover, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Let's look and see what they've said about it. And then they didn't say much, to be honest, but underneath they credited like the photographer, I think maybe the makeup artist as well, and then underneath it had the tag for the model, and I was like, yes, excellent. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go on the model's profile and see if these tattoos are on her throughout most of her Instagram, you know, to see, you know, if they were temporary, because if they were temporary, I'm sure if you've used a temporary tattoo before, you know they don't last long. You know, they last a couple of days and then they go all sticky and goopy and they get all, you know, they raise up kind of sort of thing. It looks like, you know, when you have remnants of plaster on you and it's just you get this sticky black stuff on you, it turns into that. So yeah, I wanted to investigate to see if her Instagram feed was consistent with her tattoos. And to my surprise, which is a good surprise, let me tell you, her tattoos, I can confirm, are real. Unless she sticks on the same temporary tattoos every day, which I don't think anyone has time for that. So yeah, I scrolled through her feed and all of her tattoos were real, and I honestly was shocked. I was shook-if to see that a bridal magazine, like a normal bridal magazine that isn't, you know, based on alternative models like Rock and Roll Bride. It's a normal bridal magazine that features, you know, dresses, events, flower arrangements, food, ideas and stuff like that. Normal bridal magazine stuff. So I was so excited when I discovered that her tattoos are real. She was, you know, a good representation of, you know, you can be beautiful in a wedding dress and still have tattoos. You know what I'm saying? Like, she has a hand tattooed, she has quite significant amount of coverage, and it was just, it was so nice to see, and I'm a big fan of Canada anyway, but I was just like, yes, Canada, go Canada. And yeah, I didn't say the model's name, but the model's name is Amanda May, which is a beautiful name. I'm just a big fangirl of her, honestly. And yeah, hopefully there is more representation of brides with tattoos as time goes by. And obviously I'm not expecting every bridal magazine to jump on this bandwagon and be like, oh, let's feature tattooed models continuously. Like, no, obviously we need variety, but that's the key there. We need variety within old media publications like bridal magazines and what have you. Like, we need it. And whether it is just tattooed people or people of colour or people that are part of the LGBTQ plus community, like, I feel like, not to make these things like all about, you know, new media, social media and old media, but there is a lot of old media publications that are terrified of what social media is doing when it comes to news, entertainment, all that stuff. They really need to look at what they're doing to represent everybody, because with social media, everybody has a voice, everyone has a platform to talk about the stuff they love and don't like and what's wrong and what's right in the world, and everyone has the opportunity to use freedom of speech and just really express their opinions. But with like old media and, you know, the news, magazines, newspaper, TV shows, whatever, they're all still trying to clasp on to, you know, traditions and, you know, being respectful and not out there and just, you know, how do I say this, plain Jane, just your like average person. Like, they want to talk to everybody instead of direct people. And I feel like people in sort of like old media and stuff like that need to just snap out of it and just jump on the bandwagon, basically, you know, start representing people of all races, of all sexualities, of all differences, you know, like with people with tattoos, colourful hair, your plus size models, like everyone. And I know there's a few advertisement campaigns here and there that do it, but it's not enough. So I feel like the more that the old media, you know, jumps on our level, you know, social media level, I feel like it represents people, especially in this case tattooed people, it's gonna do them the world of good, because people will start buying into it more. Because I can imagine most people find out their wedding information nowadays from online, from vloggers, from bloggers, and, you know, people like that personal touch. I can imagine, well, there's not many tattoo TV shows, but, well, there is, but they're shit, right? But I can imagine you guys watch tattoo vloggers like me, Quickened, Katrin, Nibbles, whoever does tattoo content, because it's a personal thing and we're talking about our experiences. And I feel like old media needs to jump on that and go for the personal route and, you know, target all audiences, you know, not just your everyday person that has no tattoos and blonde hair or whatever, you know. So anyway, I've gone off on one, I'm so sorry. But yeah, basically the aim of the game of this is I want more representation when it comes to tattooed people, because there is way more of them than a lot of people think, and seeing clean brides is a bad representation of brides. You know, like I was saying, we've all had that question of what will you look like when you're married, as if to say being a tattooed bride is tacky and you shouldn't have tattoos while you get married because it just looks gross. But the thing is, if you are to cover up your tattoos with makeup or whatever, and then you look back at the photos and you can't see your tattoos, which are a big part of you, I couldn't. No, I hope nobody has felt the need to stop getting tattoos because they're getting married soon and they don't, you know, want to be more covered or whatever. I hope that isn't something that you guys have ever felt before, and if you have, that sucks so much, because tattoos are a big part of our lives, and it's just sucky how the lack of representation can make people feel, you know. And yeah, oh my god. Okay, so this video has been all over the place. It's been a while since I've done a video like this though, so do excuse me, but I hope I've got my point across, and I would love to know how you feel about this. Have you been a tattooed bride? Have you had the question of what will you look like when you get married, like it's a big issue or whatever? Do you feel like there should be more representation, or do you feel like clean brides are something that is just something that has to be done for whatever reasons, for advertising reasons, to please the masses or whatever? I don't know. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions on this. And yeah, until my next video, hope you're all doing very well. Bye.